Hello and welcome to Utkalp Digital Classes. Here we are back again with the CSIR Net Life Sciences series. This is the 8th lecture and today we are going to deal with plastids. Plastids are organelles found in plants, photosynthetic bacteria as well as algae. So here today we are going to study the types of plastids, the structure of plastids and their functions. What are plastids? Plastids are large cytoplasmic organelles which are found in plants and algae. They are also found in some photosynthetic bacteria. Plastids contain pigments and these pigments are largely responsible for determination of the color of these organelles. The word plastids was derived from a Greek word plastikas, which means formed or molded. Now, plastids may be of different types. So, initially when a plant cell is formed or an algal cell is formed, that cell may have a primitive type of plastid which is known as proplastid. Now, this proplastid further differentiates into different forms of plastids depending upon the role played by that cell. So, depending on the function of that cell, we have different types of plastids in that cell. Let's look at some of the types of plastids. The first type is etioplast. Etioplast are crystalline prolamellar bodies and they are precursors of chlorophyll. Chlorophyll, as we all know, is the green pigment present in plants. So, etioplast is a precursor of chloroplast. It's a precursor which contains chlorophyll. So the next type of plastid is chromoplast. A chromoplast is actually a very broad category. There are various types of chromoplasts. Chromoplast is nothing but any plastid which contains color, which contains pigments that yield color. So chromo means color. So these are pigment bearing, pigment synthesizing plastids. Next is chloroplast. Now chloroplast is also a subcategory of chromoplast. Chloroplast contains chlorophyll. It is involved in photosynthesis and lipid synthesis. The next type of plastid is leucoplast. Leucoplast is involved in the synthesis of fatty acids and amino acids. Then you have amyloplast. Amyloplast is responsible for the storage of starch and sugars. Then you have elaioplast. Elaioplasts are again responsible for storage of lipids and oils. So if someone asks you which are the types of plastids that are involved in the storage of fatty acids, lipids and oils, so you can say they are leucoplast and elaioplast. The last category is proteinoplast. These are the site of enzyme activity, synthesis of enzymes and storage of enzymes. So the first one is phytoplast. Phytoplasts are dark brown colored plastids and they are dark brown in color due to the presence of xanthophyll pigment called fucoxanthin. So fucoxanthin is a pigment of the family of xanthophyll pigments which imparts dark brown color to phytoplasts. So some of the examples of organisms in which phytoplasts are there are brown algae, diatoms and dinoflagellates. Let me give you a very nice example of brown algae. So a type of brown algae is called kelp. These are brown algae which range from somewhere around 30 to 80 meters. So they grow this massive in size and it is because of these kelps only that underwater forests develop. Yes, they're called underwater forests because the kelps are so dense and so big in size. The next type of plastid is rhodoplast. Rhodo means red. So these types of plastids have red colored pigments and the pigment which is present is called phycoerythrin. These type of plastids are found in red algae. Next type of plastids are leucoplast. Leucoplasts are nothing but they are non-pigmented plastids. That means they do not have any pigments in them. That means they will be colorless in nature. So the main function of these plastids, main function of leucoplast is not to impart color, but the main function is storage of food materials like starch, oil and protein. Elioplasts, we have already discussed. The main function is synthesis and storage of fatty acids, terpenes and lipids. Proteinoplasts, storage of proteins in seeds and nuts. Amyloplast. So amyloplasts are found in tubers, cotyledons and endosperms. Basically, these are found in storage tissues of the plant. Tubers, cotyledons and endosperms are nothing but nutritive storage tissues. So these tubers are nothing but roots. Cotyledons are found in seeds. Endosperms are also found in seeds. So the storage tissues of seeds, shoot and roots contain amyloplast. Now there are certain special type of amyloplasts which are found in root cap. I hope everyone knows what a root cap is. So suppose these are the roots of the plant. The tip of the root will contain a structure called as the root cap. If I magnify the structure of the root, so at the tip of the root there is a triangular structure called as the root cap. So this is the root cap of the plant. So these root cap cells have special amyloplasts which serve as gravity sensors. So these amyloplasts are involved in sensing gravity. So when these amyloplasts present in the root cap sense gravity, that is when the plant knows that the roots have to grow downwards towards the gravity. So these special amyloplasts are found in root cap and they serve as gravity sensors that direct root growth down into the soil. Now let's come to chloroplast. Chloroplast is the most important plastid. I've already told you it is found in green plants and green sulfur bacteria. So found in green photosynthetic plants and algae. Algae also contain chloroplast and they're also found in certain green sulfur bacteria. They are a site of photosynthesis. What is photosynthesis? Photosynthesis is a process by which green plants manufacture, or you can say they synthesize their own food. These chloroplasts consist of chlorophyll. Chlorophyll is nothing but the pigment which imparts the green color to the plants. Each chloroplast has its own circular DNA and ribosomes. Now, similar to chloroplast, there is one more organelle other than nucleus in the plants which contain DNA, not just plants. The other organelle is mitochondria. And apart from chloroplast, mitochondria also consists of its own circular DNA. So there are in total 3 organelles in plants and 3 organelles in plants and 2 organelles in animals which contain their own DNA. In plants it is nucleus, chloroplast and mitochondria, and in animals it is nucleus and mitochondria. Remember. Moving on to the structure of chloroplast. The chloroplast first of all has membrane systems. One is the outer membrane, the other is the inner membrane, and there is a third type of membrane found in the chloroplast which is the thylakoid membrane. We'll come to this a little later. So chloroplast is a double membraned organelle. It is surrounded by 2 membranes outside, and inside the chloroplast there is a structure called as thylakoid which again is surrounded by a membrane. So this is a thylakoid inside the chloroplast, and this is also surrounded by one single membrane which is called as the thylakoid membrane. Next is the stroma. Stroma is nothing but the protein-rich alkaline aqueous fluid found inside the chloroplast. So this matrix inside the chloroplast is called as stroma. So stroma is present between the thylakoid membrane and the inner chloroplast membrane. So this is the inner chloroplast membrane and this is the thylakoid membrane. In between these 2 membranes we have the presence of this aqueous fluid called as stroma. So I can also say that thylakoids are present in the stroma. Thylakoids are suspended in the stroma. Now what are thylakoids? Thylakoids are small interconnected membranous sacs where chlorophyll is found and the light reactions of photosynthesis take place. So these are membranous stacks. This is the chloroplast, this is the outer chloroplast membrane, this is the inner chloroplast membrane. Inside the stroma we have these sac-like structures called as thylakoids. And these thylakoids have the presence of chlorophyll in them, and this is the site, the thylakoids is a site where light reactions of photosynthesis take place. Now, if these thylakoids are stacked on top of each other, if they exist as stacks like this, each stack of thylakoids is called as grana. So this is a single thylakoid, this is a stack of thylakoids, this is called a thylakoid, this is called a grana. I hope it's clear to everyone. Here again we'll discuss the structure. This is the outer chloroplast membrane, this is the inner chloroplast membrane. Inside the inner chloroplast membrane you have an aqueous fluid suspended, which is stroma. In the stroma you have the thylakoids. These are the thylakoids. This here, if you cut the thylakoids into two, from the middle, you will see this yellow part. This is the lumen of the thylakoid. Now, if each thylakoid is found independently in the stroma, it is just called the thylakoid. But if the thylakoids are arranged as stacks, here you can see stacks of thylakoids, these are called as grana. A single stack is called granum, whereas multiple stacks are called grana. So grana is the plural of granum. In between the two membranes, in between the inner chloroplast membrane and the outer chloroplast membrane, lies the intermembrane space. Now there is one very important concept here. The thylakoids which are present in stacks are also called as granule lamellae. Granule lamellae. Lamellae spelling here you can see. The thylakoids which are present in stacks are called granule lamellae, while independently lying thylakoids in the stroma are called stromal lamellae. So here these thylakoids are in stacks, so these are called granule lamellae, while this thylakoid here, this one, here it's lying freely, so it's called the stromal lamellae. Now, why are the thylakoids present as stacks? What is the use of stacking of thylakoids in grana? So the stacking increases the surface area of photosynthesis and allows maximum absorption of light. So due to the stacking, light absorption increases and there is more surface area for photosynthesis to take place. Now, the pigments which are present in the thylakoid membranes, these pigments are responsible for photosynthesis. I already told you the green pigment which is responsible for photosynthesis is chlorophyll. Along with chlorophyll, there are certain other pigments also, and these clusters of pigments which are present in the thylakoid membrane, these are called as photosystems, and these photosystems are responsible for photosynthesis to take place. Now, apart from pigments, the thylakoid membrane also has mobile electron carriers, it has proton pumps, it has ATP synthase complex. What is the use of these mobile electron carriers, proton pumps and ATP synthase complex? This we'll study when we are studying plant physiology. When I'm going to deal with photosynthesis and the entire mechanism of the electron transport chain in plants, that is when I'm going to discuss the role of each one of these. So I already told you, at the heart of each photosystem, photosystems are nothing but clusters of pigments. Now, at the center of each photosystem, there is a reaction center. What is a reaction center? It is a complex of proteins, pigments and cofactors. And this complex uses light to reduce molecules. That means it absorbs light, it gives out electrons and reduces the molecules. So suppose this is a photosystem. At the center of the photosystem lies the reaction center. Reaction center is nothing but a complex of proteins, pigments and cofactors. And just outside the reaction center, you have light harvesting complexes. So these are light harvesting complexes, or they are also called antenna complexes. Now, what is the role of these light harvesting complexes? They help in the absorption of light and they help in the funneling of the light energy. So, light harvesting complexes are also certain proteins and pigments similar to the reaction center, and these proteins and pigments present in the light harvesting complex, these absorb light and they pass on the light energy to the reaction center. So you have several light harvesting complexes outside, and then you have a major reaction center inside. So first of all, some pigments in the light harvesting complex will absorb a photon of light. They will pass this energy to the next complex in the light harvesting complex. Then this will further pass on the photon of light to the other pigments in the light harvesting complex. And finally, this energy, the energy from the sunlight, will reach the reaction center. The reaction center will absorb this energy and it will get excited. Once the pigments in the reaction center get excited, they will release electron, and these electrons will be used to reduce certain molecules. And this is the process of photosynthesis. This is a concept in the process of photosynthesis which I am going to discuss later when we are studying plant physiology. So I hope the presence of reaction center as well as light harvesting complex in a photosystem is clear to you. So now there are two families of reaction centers. One is type 1 reaction center, which is found in chloroplast and green sulfur bacteria. So because this type 1 reaction center is different from type 2 reaction center, we have two types of photosystems. So one is photosystem 1. Photosystem 1 is nothing but a photosystem which contains type 1 reaction center, and there is a photosystem 2 which contains type 2 reaction center. Clear? So type 1 reaction center, I already told you, it is found in chloroplast and green sulfur bacteria, whereas type 2 reaction center is found in chloroplast and non-sulfur purple bacteria. So type 1 reaction center is most reactive at 700 nanometers of light. So only when it absorbs 700 nanometers of light, it is going to give out this electron. Clear? The lambda max for type 1 reaction center is 700 nanometers. Whereas the type 2 reaction center differs from type 1 reaction center in its lambda max. So type 2 reaction center is most reactive at 680 nanometers. So type 1 reaction center has different proteins, different pigments and different cofactors than in type 2 reaction center. Therefore, the two reaction centers are absorbing light at different wavelengths. Now, since type 1 reaction center absorbs light at 700 nanometers, the photosystem 1 is also called as P700. And type 2 reaction center absorbs light at 680 nanometers. Therefore, photosystem 2 is also called as P680. And you know why photosystem 1 is called as 1 and photosystem 2 is called as 2? Because photosystem 1 was discovered earlier. Now let's come to the next topic, next very important topic, which is protein delivery to chloroplast. So how are chloroplast proteins sorted and delivered to the chloroplast? So the proteins which are destined to be a part of the chloroplast have a removable N-terminal sequence called as a transit peptide. So this transit peptide is highly variable in length and sequence. Chloroplast contains 6 compartments where proteins can be delivered. So proteins can be delivered to the inner and outer membranes of the chloroplast. Proteins can be delivered to the intermembrane space. They can also be delivered to stroma, to thylakoid membrane or to the thylakoid lumen. So there are 6 compartments where proteins can be delivered. So there are different sorting and delivery mechanisms for all these 6 compartments. Now, most of the chloroplast proteins are imported from the cytosol. That means The proteins which are destined to be a part of the chloroplast are synthesized on free ribosomes lying in the cytosol. Now, the inner and outer membrane of chloroplast. So this is the outer membrane, this is the inner membrane. These two membranes have certain translocation complexes, certain protein complexes, which are a passage for the proteins to come inside the chloroplast. Right? So these are called as translocation complexes, and the inner chloroplast membrane has the TIC complex, that is translocation in the inner membrane of chloroplast. Translocation complex in the inner membrane of chloroplast. Whereas the outer membrane has the TOC complex. That means translocation complex in the outer chloroplast membrane. So these two complexes aid in the entry of proteins in the chloroplast. Once the proteins are inside the chloroplast, whether in the membranes or in the lumen, they are assisted by chaperones and then they are folded. Now, the proteins which have to be a part of the stroma, that is, which have to enter the stroma of the chloroplast. So this is the stroma. So those which have to enter the stroma, they have a stroma targeting domain in their transit peptide. So if this is the complete N-terminal transit peptide, there will be a stroma targeting domain. Stroma targeting domain. And this is the complete transit peptide. Now once in the stroma, this stroma targeting domain will be cleaved off by a peptidase. And those polypeptides which have to be a part of the membrane, which don't have to enter the stroma, they just have this transit peptide without this stroma targeting domain. Now, the polypeptides which are destined to be a part of the thylakoid membrane. Now, once the polypeptide is in the stroma, it can lie in the stroma or it can enter the thylakoids, right? So, in case the polypeptides are destined to be a part of the thylakoid membrane, there is an additional segment in the transit peptide which is called as thylakoid transfer domain. Now, this thylakoid transfer domain is responsible for the entry of the peptide into the thylakoid membrane. So, this figure explains whatever I have just told you. Here, you can see the TOC complex, the translocation complex in the outer chloroplast membrane. Here you can see the TIC complex, the translocation complex in the inner chloroplast membrane. Now, this polypeptide, the orange colored polypeptide, enters into the stroma through these two complexes. Through these two complexes, it bypasses the chloroplast membrane and enters the stroma. Now, how does it enter the stroma? Because it has a small stroma targeting domain. This red colored domain, can you see? Now, once in the stroma of the chloroplast, there are certain chaperones which help in the folding of the protein. And once in the stroma, this stroma targeting domain is cleaved off by peptidases. So, the protein lies free in the stroma, where the stroma targeting domain is cleaved off once the protein has entered in the stroma and it has folded. In the next segment, 1b, you can see that the polypeptide has entered the stroma, but along with the stroma targeting domain, it also has a thylakoid transfer domain. This black colored segment is the thylakoid transfer domain. Now, when this protein enters the stroma targeting domain is cleaved off by the peptidases, but the thylakoid transfer domain remains as such. And this thylakoid transfer domain leads this polypeptide into the thylakoid. Now, this is the thylakoid. This is the thylakoid lumen. Now, this polypeptide enters the thylakoid lumen, and in the thylakoid lumen, this thylakoid transfer domain is cleaved off. Because its use is over now, the polypeptide is already into the thylakoid. So, this thylakoid transfer domain is also cleaved off using some peptidases present in the thylakoid lumen. I hope this is clear. So, this is the end of this lecture. The next lecture The next lecture we are going to deal with mitochondria, and prior to that, I'll take up some questions, some important questions which were a part of the previous year papers, and then I'll move on to mitochondria, and then after mitochondria we'll be studying plasma membrane. Thank you. And for all the latest lectures on CSIR Life Sciences, please subscribe to Utkarsh Digital Classes. Guys, you know that the CSIR NET exam is really close, and there are hardly any months left for the preparation. So it will be better if you buck up and prepare really well. Practice your questions, practice sample papers, and go through the previous year papers. Time your preparation. Solve one paper every day. And that is how you're going to be very thorough with your cell biology especially. Thank you.